This episode is brought to you by Granicus and the Macro Group. Welcome everybody to the Black Tech Talent Podcast, aka BTT Discussions. Today we have a very special guest, Chikio Richmond. She has, been influential in what we've been doing here at Black Tech Talent as one of our, advisors and just helping be a connector with some of the different strategic partners we've been looking to work with. I've known her for a few years now. She's assisted in some of the stuff we've done with Bitcoin and just been a real great, friend and influencer in what we're trying to do with diversity and inclusion. So I'm excited to have her on the show today. Chikio, welcome.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And I'm excited to be here on the show today.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you're at as far as working, as far as entrepreneurship and some of the things you've achieved, and then we'll go back kind of into your journey and discuss what got you into tech and what brought you to where you are today.
Okay, yeah. So let me just kind of hop right in. Where I am today is I've actually just recently retired from 13 years of corporate America. And I now run two companies. My first is a sober housing company. I am the executive director and also CFO or, chief technology officer. And I also have an assisted living home, and I'm also filling those same two seats in that organization as well. So essentially applying all of the skills and certifications and tools that I've acquired throughout my career, and now I'm able to apply those things to my own companies.
Awesome, and congratulations on retiring. Let the people know where you retired from and just some of the companies you've worked at.
Yes, so I just retired from Comcast Business in September 2020. I was an enterprise account executive there. That's a fancy way of saying I work with very large organizations, Fortune 500 companies, to set up network infrastructure, also routers and switches, and consult and give guidance in terms of telecommunications as well.
Awesome. So, typically on this show, we want to highlight people's journey in order to highlight what you've done and what you've achieved, but also to help inspire the next person that's thinking about jumping into the tech industry, whether it's being a software developer, engineer, or whether it's literally working inside of a tech company, but in a different department or a different way, such as yourself. So what was kind of your introduction to the possibility of being in tech, and what made you kind of pursue that when a lot of Black people haven't?
Yeah, okay. Good question. So my journey into technology was very non-traditional. I went to college here. Well, I should say there in Minnesota, currently in Texas. But I went to college at MCTC my freshman year. I actually became pregnant the summer going into my sophomore year of college, and subsequently shifted directions in terms of majors. And I graduated with an AA in cosmetology. I was just very adamant that I wanted to pursue something that would allow me to immediately go into the workforce and start earning money to take care of my son. From there, I actually started in corporate in finance, but one day ended up at a career fair for Quest Communications. And they were hiring for their call center. They were hiring for small business representatives. And that was my introduction into technology, was through working for a telecommunications company. Now, at that time, to get into telecommunications or IT technology, it was pretty brutal. It was not like, today where you see a lot of 2-3 week courses and then they will allow you to work in the field. We actually went through a 3-month training where we learned how to code, essentially, because as crazy as it sounds, 10 years ago, when you ordered a telephone line and internet service for your business and or your home, a person actually had to enter in the codes to a programmer to determine what you want. So,
Mm,
um, yeah.
I didn't know that.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, first steps at learning syntax. Yeah. And if obviously you took a course, and if you were not successful, you were not allowed to move on and retain employment with the organization. During that time, everyone that was in telecommunications had to go through this type of training in order to continue on. And so I think for me, that was really my first exposure to technology and learning the details of it, that it wasn't this automated process and it wasn't this magical thing behind the scenes. Instantly, I was fascinated. And I think I just caught the bug from there, because I went from working in the call center as a representative on the phone to being part of the first small business account management organization, which was essentially kind of like a level up, where you are now working with small business owners who may not qualify as an enterprise, but are essentially on their way to that point. So my responsibility was to be able to advise them and guide them in terms of technology, how to be able to perform a digital transformation in their organization and leverage technology. Um, and I was with that organization for about 5 years, which after that I ventured into more of the hardware side, and I worked for an organization called These was I'm sorry, agnostic company that dealt with both phone systems and telephony. Also worked with managed services as well. So really covered the full gamut. And in that position, I was able to learn a lot more about telephony and all of the basics. So I have a lot of exposure and experience with IP telephony of the full gamut. So Cisco, ShoreTel, Nortel, which no longer exist. Really, any system that's out there today, I've worked with it and or consulted on it. And that's when I decided to take this craft really serious, and I pursued my Cisco certification in network routing and switching, which essentially is a credential that will qualify you to become a network engineer. And at one point in my life, that was an organization where I could aspire to move up into a network engineer position. But somewhere along the lines there, I was tapped on the shoulder to start doing some entrepreneurial projects, and decided that, working for a corporation the rest of my life in that retirement plan wasn't the direction that I wanted to go into anymore. However, I knew at that time I did not have a solid plan or a roadmap for entrepreneurship. So I still dedicated myself to technology, which is my love and my passion anyway. And I was with Black Box Technologies for a number of years. And I subsequently left because I went to an organization called Apex Revenues Technology. And within that role, it actually allowed me the opportunity to work with raw data files. So I was actually able to work with raw data files and supported medical institutions such as Alina and Park Nicollet, and was a dedicated account manager to those health facilities. And essentially I was in charge of all of their billing. And so anytime that they send in their billing, it was my job to look at those raw data files and be able to manipulate them and also verify all the information was accurate to ensure proper printing. So did that for a bit. Again, putting those coding skills to good use. And from there, I decided that, I missed network connectivity. And so I actually went back to CenturyLink. I was asked to come back to CenturyLink, where I stayed for about a year and a half before someone from Comcast Business tapped me on the shoulder and made me an offer that I couldn't turn down. And so I feel that I've been fortunate enough that by just staying true and being very interested and intrigued and loving technology, I've been able to really grow that in terms of revenue, right? Because that's what was able to fund my entrepreneurial dreams, and now make that come true for me, where I no longer work in corporate America and I am now just the CEO of my own two organizations. Um, but yeah, that's been my journey. And one thing I always impress upon people about my journey and the roles that I have is that, one thing I didn't really touch on were the compensation levels. And so by going into technology through this non-traditional route, I entered into technology at the age of 23 years old. Um, in my life, I only ever aspired to make $50,000 a year. I wanted a white picket fence, a house, that all American dream. And I thought that I would get to that $50,000 somewhere when I was in my 30s or maybe my 40s, not realizing that within 3 years I would hit that goal in my 20s.
Mhm.
That I was able to make $50,000 into my 20s. And for the last 3 years of my career, I was able to clear over six figures, and I do not have a bachelor's degree.
Which is awesome. You it's an inspiring story because you mentioned you started off going to MCTC, got pregnant, and then you hustled to make sure you could take care of your child, and then you got into tech, but then you saw that it was a real opportunity to kind of transform your life, and you ended up just being passionate about it in general, and then you've done all these amazing things in a short span of time. I mean, you say 13 years, but it's like that's short compared to the fact that you started in your 20s. So that's not, you know what I mean? And then to be able to say, well, I retired from working 13 years, that's crazy. For a lot of people, are going to be like, I want to retire when I'm 50, when I'm 60, and you're doing it at such a young age. So I want to give you, applause for that. Um,
Oh,
because I
thank you.
mean, it is. I mean, a lot of people like one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I'm 31. Is retiring around 40 or so, and not retiring from working or doing things, but retiring from I'm not going to be doing any of the busy work, like just really only doing the things that I want to do when I want to do them, and things I'm passionate about, and doing things from a place of interest and not survival,
Hmm.
right? And so, as you mentioned, like you were on a path you thought you wanted to take. You had a kid, it took you down another path with that, which actually was a blessing, on both obviously your child, but also the path that it took you down ended up just boosting your trajectory, and kind of you had that hustler mentality came into play, and you built a great future for yourself. But I look at it like I would like to start over at 40 and be like, what do I like? What do I want to do? What do I want to do just for passion? And what do I want to do to try to make money from? And just kind of rediscovering things from a non survival point of view, because I've always had to do things and then figure out how to monetize them to justify doing them. A lot of
Oh,
traveling was business trips, and then maybe I'll sneak in something leisure, right? So it's
hmm.
just like, to be able to accomplish what you're accomplishing now. And like I said, for me, it's not I turn 40 and then I'm just sitting around not doing anything. I'm gonna still build businesses, invest in things, be a mentor, be a public speaker, have some sort of platform, podcast, whatever it may be. I mean, people who know me know I'm into film and screenwriting and all that. We're actually relaunching the Fame podcast, top of the year. But um, but in the same way you are, like you retired from the corporate side, but you're now you're getting more into the entrepreneurship and your business and figuring out other businesses, other things you want to do. So it's just a retirement from the, like I said, that's kind of survival and trying to figure that out and just restarting and
Hmm.
rebranding and rebuilding yourself. So once again, congratulations on figuring that out and being such a hustler. One
Thank
of the,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. One of the things that I know you for is being a connector and being a networker, and that's something that I'm trying to push into the minds of our audience how important that is. So talk a little bit about how you kind of became that person who everybody knows, everybody. And because a lot of people are introverted, especially in the tech field, a lot of people are introverted, maybe a little socially awkward, or just don't really know the value of networking outside of your core friendship and kind of coworkers and fan base. So what kind of let you know that that's something that's important to have in your career?
That's a good question. Candidly speaking, it's not something it's not something that I acquired or even thought about from a career perspective. I think that that more so kind of came from my foundation. I'm a country girl. I come from very humble beginnings. I'm from Marks, Mississippi. I literally come off of a dirt road called Cotton Street. And where I'm from, and just what my parents instilled in me is that I came from a really like religious background, very small community, very tight knit community. And the one thing that was always impressed upon me was in order for you to make it, in order for you to like really build something in this world, it takes more than just yourself. And so, networking or cross networking or helping each other, it's just something that my parents taught me was kind of a necessity, and kind of came out of, again, also where I was from, because that is the way that people were able to attain wealth and to grow, was through bartering with each other and supporting each other, and figuring out how we can win together. And so, with that being said, I've always kind of had that mentality that, we win together, we lose alone. And so I think for me, it was backwards, like having that mentality, but then, putting myself in a situation and in scenarios where now that tool can work to my benefit, because I am connecting with people and I am talking to people. And so with that being said, I've never connected with people from just I've never looked at it as a strategic business tool. That's always kind of come from my heart, just kind of as a right thing to do. And I think that when you are looking to expand yourself and you want to grow yourself, I think that the natural progression is also to grow others and to connect with others. Um, because I learned a long time ago, the one thing that you can do and how you can shoot yourself in the foot in this world is by not standing up and asking for help. We
Mm,
all need a little bit of help. And also, it doesn't always mean that help needs to come from me, right? Or that I'm going to be the right fit. So also, just because maybe there's an opportunity that doesn't fit me, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't connect somebody else to that opportunity, and give them a chance to further their position as well. And I kind of live by the pay it forward motto. And I really do believe that when you pay things forward, I'm also a big believer of karma. I know that's like talking business, and that's kind of all spiritual and weird, but I do believe that. I believe that it's important to grow your network, let people know who you are, let them know what you stand for, let them know what your intentions are. Because in business, all you have is your word, right? And so I feel like the more people you allow people to see that your word is bond and you are truly genuine in your interest, not to just grow yourself, but to grow them in the long term, just being genuine and creating that foundation, I think that will lead you into other opportunities. It will also help open doors for yourself as well, because I believe that when people see that type of when they see that people are willing to extend that type of help and support, I think that naturally it starts to come back to you as well. So I don't know if that
definitely.
really answered the question, but that's truly where what I feel and why I network with people, It's always just come from a genuine place of wanting to help and also knowing that I need help and trying to align myself with people who are like-minded, that it makes sense for us to be in communication.
Definitely. And it's that abundance mind frame. Like me, an opportunity comes, it doesn't fit for me. Me giving it to someone else doesn't hurt me. In fact, it may help me because that person may appreciate it, and down the line, it comes back in some other shape or form. So people have to have an abundance mind frame, and sometimes it's hard to have when you've been, if you come from a situation of lack of, and you come from an environment of lack of, then it's hard to think like that. But I've seen a lot of people that unfortunately, they think like that and they act like that. They could have the connection that you need and would be a great connection. It would never, and they're not using it, by the way. They don't have the capacity to use it. They're not interested in using it, but they want it, they won't introduce you. And then you have the people
Mm,
who will introduce you, and then they're like, but I need this out of it. I've met people who literally try to charge people for friendly, warm introductions, and it's not a but it's not a how can I put it? It's like if somebody wanted to meet you and I'm like, all right, but you got to pay me, or if y'all end up doing some
mm-hmm.
business, I got to be in the mix of it. Where it's like I'm not facilitating the deal. That's different. If you're like, hey, there's a deal, there's a situation here, I'm gonna help you put it together, blah blah blah, but this is what I want, or I charge a fee. But there are people who will literally try to charge other people just to make an introduction and have
Wow.
no type of official business going on in the first place. Just like, hey, this person's doing something cool, I would love to meet them and pick their brain or talk to them or tell them what I'm working on. And so I try to, tell people, like, if you just do good business, it'll always come around the way you want it to, because one way or another, even if the people exclude you or whatever it may be, like, it's gonna come around that you made that connection, that introduction, and you'll be able to get other things done. And there's always more connections and introductions to be made. And I can say, even for myself, once I got into tech, because coming from the entertainment side, a lot of people are like that. They're not going to
Mm.
introduce you to agents and managers so you can book the acts that you want to do. They'll try to, all of a sudden, they're an agent to introduce you to an agent. They're like,
Wow.
I can get you the best price in town, but you got to pay me this. Like, it's crazy. So, the entertainment side, especially specifically in promotions, it's more
The
cutthroat.
It's crazy you say that. Have you ever watched the movie The Black Godfather?
Yeah, I did.
Clarence Avant.
Yeah,
If I could say I aspire to be like anybody in this world, it is that man.
yeah,
Um, I think that it is unfortunate that we live in that society, and because what you're saying is right, and I've experienced a lot of that myself. Um, I think that when we talk about good business, one thing that I've been reading about as an entrepreneur, as a person, just personal development,
hmm
overall development, is that the way you are as a human being, as a person, is also going to be who you are in business. And I think that for some reason people think that there's a difference, or like there's a distinction. And just in my own personal experience, I disagree. There isn't a difference. I believe that who you are as a person in your personal life, that is who you are in business as well. And so those things that we've seen when people are trying to gouge us or charge us for introductions or figure out how they can get a buck out of it, I think those people are the same way in their personal lives. And I think that it shows up, right?
yeah,
People have that kind of behavior. It's very indicative of other areas of their life, and you might see those same people not moving up the ladder as fast. You might see those same people at one point they're getting opportunities, but because of that type of that greed, they might not be getting the opportunities that they could, right? So
yeah,
when I think like that, I never want to be that person. I never want to be that person that could have blocked somebody else's blessing because I didn't get a cut, or piece, or the project wasn't about me. I think that also as a leader, a good leader wants to build other leaders. And so if you are a person that you want to gouge someone for giving them support, or you have to have some type of fiduciary exchange in order just to do the right thing, right?
Yep.
I think again, like those people, it shows up in their life, it shows up in their business, and I never want to be that person that's shooting myself in the foot or cutting off my blessings because I want to kind of block someone else's.
Yeah, definitely. And I was getting to that, and tech was kind of the first time where like introductions were made so freely. Like introductions I wouldn't have expected to be made like that. Even I've had founders where I'm chopping up to them like, oh, this is such and such. He invested in my company. You guys should talk. Like in entertainment, that's not happening without somebody getting some type of cut, or what I mean, cut me in or
Yeah,
cut it out. And so that's been something that's been actually pretty cool as far as networking and just the way business is handled a little bit differently. There's still some cutthroat stuff. There's still snakes in the grass and stuff like that. But as a whole, it's kind of understood that you network, that you help each other, that you mentor and make connections because it does come back around one way or another. Your reputation, is in the room even when you're not.
you're right that it is. I mean, so even like I said, I'm here in Texas, I'm here in Houston, and you and I have talked offline, and I don't mind sharing online. Like you said, I have retired from working from corporate, but I'm very much so working for myself.
Yep.
And even being here in Houston, I'm actually here because I have a relocation plan for 2022. But as part of that relocation plan, I'm here now actively researching the local market and figuring out how I can establish my business. I've been fortunate enough already that I've been introduced to some business developers and already starting to create that network again, right? And
Hmm.
my hope in doing so is not just I'm creating the network for me. When I hear things as well, it's still, can that apply to Mike? Can it apply to somebody else I know? Because again, we win together.
Yeah.
I just feel that we don't have a large enough piece of the financial pie in the world, in America, in our state, for us to, kind of be doing this nastiness or nitpicking or, blocking of other people's blessings. I think that this is truly a time that I would hope people understand that we need to come together. We need diversity. We need to be able to have multiple people in in multiple places, because it's not about who is leading the charge, because it takes a whole crew, right? Like Michael Jordan didn't win. He didn't win those rings alone. It took the team,
Right.
you know? So I'd rather be on a winning team than try to be the captain of a sinking boat.
Yeah.
And I think that if more people apply that type of thinking, we would see a lot more doors open. I think also we would see a lot more stable platforms come about because we would start respecting each person in their craft a lot better. And I think once people see that that respect is there, it makes them also appreciate themselves. Because I feel one thing that I see a lot of as well is like isms, classisms, and that ism, some people take as a banner to separate themselves, that sometimes feeds the ego. And
Hmm.
I think like that's where we also see a lot of more division, without not understanding that classism that you think is actually making you look better, putting you to a higher position, is actually dragging you down.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that's constant is change. And if you are not positioning yourself for change, which means connecting with other people, having conversations, creating partnerships, doing that exchange of information, and you're just treating yourself as this like little silo island where it's just team of me, and all of mine, I can tell you that that's not going to go very far. And especially in the climate that we're in today, from what I've seen and experienced, people who have that mindset are losing. And those are the people who are staying in survival mode. Mike, like you talked about, those are the people who are not able to transition out of survival mode and get to a place, like you said, at 40, where they're reevaluating and saying, what's my dream now? Right. because those people haven't built other people up. They haven't encouraged other people. They haven't created a machine that runs itself, because you have other people who have invested interest in that machine that are willing and want to do it, and they're working that machine just as you would, because you've given them something now that they can call their own, or you've given them an edge up, or you've given them some type of return benefit. So that's another piece that plays into that, why I feel like I see a lot of people who are not able to do what you're wanting to do. And I know you, and you have that mindset. So when you say that you're going to be 40 and you're going to reassess, I'm like, man, I can't wait, because I know that the way that you operate and do business, that's in your future.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's, I look at different situations and I'm just like, people have to become more intentional. Like they have to be more intentional. They have to think in abundance. And it's funny because, like, I think I've said this to you before, but I've definitely said to other people, like, I don't really like to participate in like contests and like certain stuff like that, because what ends up happening is, if you have something that's somewhat of a no-brainer, right? Then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes, I feel like a lot of times the judges feel like it's their job to pick something that um is a little bit more, it's like they can put their stamp on it, right? Like if we had a car show and I pull up in a Lamborghini, and it's the coolest car, it's the most expensive car there, everybody's taking pictures next to it, and then somebody pulls up with something that's, you know, some type of old school or some type of, new foreign car that we don't really have in the market like that, like a Lotus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like the
You
judges
had
are
to put
like,
the Lotus in there.
yeah. Well, I
You
feel
know,
like
ain't nothing come.
I just feel like the judges, they're like, well, that's a no-brainer, so I'm not going to pick that. I want to pick something that, if it does win, I can say I believed in it from the beginning. And I feel like with premium, for instance, um, I would have judges and people from different accelerators and all that come to me on the side and just be like, man, you got one of the dopest, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We love what you're doing, but we don't feel like we have the resources to kind of like champion it, or the people in our network to put with you as mentors, so that's why you didn't get into this program, or that's why you didn't. And so it's like, but then it's like you feel like you're constantly like missing out, because you're not, if you have a dope idea, you're not given the resources, and it stays an idea, right?
Right.
So
But
luckily,
you know what, Mike? I don't think that, I'm sorry to mean to cut you off,
go
but
ahead.
when they're telling you that, because I know you and I know like your ideas and I know the things that you've done and produced, what I hear is that they're just too small for you.
Yeah.
They're just too small for you. And so I actually think you not winning some of those contests, you not partnering with some of those people was a blessing in disguise, because what we've talked about, what I've seen you produce, what I've seen you put out, just with the direction and your trajectory of where you are going, it is not something that should be stifled by maybe a local cohort, or local
Right.
resources that can't meet your need, because what you have is something that can grow to such a large scale. I just think they're just not ready for you.
Yeah, and some of them admit it and some of them don't. But at the end of the day, like, of course I'm a visionary, but I'm still human though. So you still want to, you know what I'm saying? You still want to get some of those wins and be involved in different things as well in your process, and tap into certain resources. And I was just looking, the reason why I brought that up is because something else I applied for, but with Black Tech Talent, um, we didn't end up being a finalist. But I'm looking and I'm like, in 5 years, I would be bringing over $2 billion annually to the Black community in what I'm doing. I didn't see anything. I didn't see any finalists that were doing anything that impactful. Because there were 13 finalists, by the way.
Oh, wow.
They haven't picked the winner, because then there's a pitch competition and they'll have the actual winners, and that'll still be a multitude. It might be 3 to 5 winners. But just in the out of 13 finalists, I didn't see any company. I'm not saying they were less, but I didn't see any that were as. You know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
it ends up boiling down to the same thing. And I'm not mad about it, but once again, like I said, I'm still human, so we still want to get some of those wins, and we still want to be able to have the conversation of like, yo, this is like we're doing real stuff. Not only are we doing cool stuff, but we're doing like real stuff,
Right.
real
The
impactful stuff,
real the
and
real work is what you're
like
doing.
longevity. And the way we're doing it is like you mentioned earlier, nobody's really been able to do it this way, this fast, right? There are some um, organizations that I've looked at that are well respected in different circles, and people even be like, "Have you talked to such and such?" And then I go, and then I will talk to them, and then I'll be like, "So, what resources are you missing, or what do you need? How can we help you?" And they're missing a lot of the things that we do. And
Mm-hmm.
also just looking at it from a numbers perspective, like we're at 2,000, over 2,000 community members now, and just technically really since September, right? Because it's September is
Oh,
when we really started like, all right, now let's launch the Facebook page. Now let's push,
right.
start adding people on the LinkedIn business page, all that. But as a whole, even from meetup to registration on our website to the newsletter and all that, like, over the course of 5 months, obviously we won the Inclusive Evolution Award. We're working with over 15 corporations to bring these job opportunities. So and then when me and you first talked, we had the conversation of who should we partner with strategically, as allies in this and as a resource, and that we're going to champion and that will also champion us. And at that stage we had few soft conversations with some people, but now it's like all of them are reaching out to us. And I've talked to Code Savvy and Software for Good and Tech Dump and all these different
Yes.
organizations in different schools, Prime Digital, MCTC, all these different, and they're reaching out to me. So I'm like, I just talked to a organization in Nigeria that they said he said he just trained 100 Nigerian women on how to code, but he can't get them their jobs over there. And
Wow.
I'm like, well, we'll see if we can get you some over here. And I told him, I'm like, we'll try a few things out. And if they go good, I said, you'll be a hero, because the difference in currency is gonna transform everybody around you. Because he's like, he's like, well, because he said their problem over there specifically is which is similar to what we have over here. It's not as strict, but it's the time frame of experience. So he's like, the
Right.
companies over here want, 3 years or whatever it may be. And he's like, I'm having a hard time even getting them internships. And I'm like, well, let's create something in some type of flow back and forth, and we can try some stuff out. And he was like, yeah, we don't even need to get paid. It's not about the money. I'm like, no, you'll get paid. I'm like, um, because why not? It's a difference in currency. So for because I said it might take a little bit of work to get some of the corporations to do business, because some of them are big enough where they already
Mm-hmm.
have people over there that so if whatever the issue is, there's a disconnect. I said, but we have a lot of startups, and a lot of them are outsourcing to China and India. If we can get them to outsource to you, then they're technically getting a deal, because they're still paying less than they would pay, but it's actually a ton of money for you guys over there. And now they get that experience and can make some money, some life-changing money.
Wow.
I forget specifically the number he said, but he was like $50 US. He was like, it's like a lot of money over here. So I'm like, imagine getting a startup over here to spend $1,500 for like a 3-person team, and they each took on $500 US to build a
Wow.
website. Like that could be
That's a lot
game
of money.
changing. Yeah.
Let me know how that project ends up going. I actually have a trip planned to West Africa in the spring. I'm going for pretty much about 3 weeks, and it started out as a personal trip, but now it's a business trip
Of course.
because I want to invest in some technology companies in Africa.
Yeah, and you mentioned to me, I think at the top of the year you were thinking about doing that. So
Oh yeah. So now
yeah,
I'm going there in the spring to start that research process. I also want to build a hotel in Ghana. So I this is a research trip. I'll be in West Africa, I will be in Ghana, and I will be in Nigeria. Are two of the countries that I'm visiting. I have not determined if there's going to be a third. But those two for sure, just so that I can be there, be local, start to have the conversation, start to network, and create the relationships to figure out where we can go from there. I do
definitely,
a ton of opportunity. We just need to start tapping into it.
definitely. And so that's that's another, they he reached out on LinkedIn and was like, I saw Black Tech Talent. I listened to your podcast, saw what you were doing, and I was hoping, maybe there's something we could work out where, we can help our people. And so that's, and the point I'm making is we're doing. I have first off, I have a track record. Second off, like I said, I'm bringing this from a different angle than other people have tried to bring it. We're growing fast, but we have a chance to really impact people. And so, for people listening, whether it's, people from different corporations in the diversity inclusion field, in the IT recruitment field, in HR, whether it's VCs or angel investors, reach out because we're doing something that is sustainable, that's profitable, but that can also change the trajectory of, inclusion and specifically economic inclusion,
Yeah. I
right?
think that you forgot one thing there, Mike. Not only can it do those things, looking at COVID. So, one thing that I used to talk very passionately to people about is because my area of expertise is infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to try to emphasize the understanding of ownership when it comes to infrastructure.
Yeah,
It seems that people really weren't grasping that until right now, because
yeah,
where it's pertinent, right? Here's where the ownership of infrastructure, here's where technology has become the number one most pertinent thing in the world for us to be able to maintain and be able to shift into a digital transformed world that will be the new way of living.
yeah,
So, like with that said, what you're creating is not just these things where it can be impacting to these people, or it can be, it's actually a requirement and it's a necessity at this point, because we are literally trying to figure out how we can rebuild our economic system. And this is a world struggle. This was a global pandemic. And so people have been impacted all over the world. And so what you're doing is an essential need. It's going to be an essential requirement, and it's something that has to be tackled. Unfortunately, there are people who
mm-hmm.
will have the money, who have the ability to fund, who are investing in projects. And this one, unfortunately, may not be prioritized for some. But even if for those people it's an afterthought, it is still something that has to be tackled. It has to be addressed. And so, what you're doing is you are creating the foundation for that. You've created the platform for that. And so, you know, I'm not saying that hopefully, angel investors are listening. Hopefully these people are listening. They need to be listening. They need to be taking note, because this is something that has to be addressed. We would just hope that it's addressed on the front end and doesn't get left off to be the last thing on the plate.
Definitely, definitely. So, another thing we like to talk about on the podcast is, kind of some of those experiences, positive and negative, working in corporate, as a Black person, and then for you as a Black woman. So, what are some of the obstacles, for instance, that, because remember, we're looking to educate, but
Mm-hmm.
but we're also looking to help other Black people getting into this field or considering it, to know what some of the obstacles are so they can try to circumvent it, or at least know what to expect. So what were some things that you felt like, through your journey, were obstacles specifically for being Black, or specifically for being a Black woman?
Before I answer that, I think I need to start out by saying that that Black professionals, tech professionals, should have a support group.
For sure.
um, And I say that to say I was in technology, corporate America for 13 years. Of those 13 years, the last 5 for sure, I was the only woman, I was the youngest, and I was the only person of color in my role. And I have heard and faced and dealt with very uncomfortable situations. I could even say daily. Um, I can give you an example. When President Obama was in office and we were under his administration, I would go to work and I would actually sit in team huddles, and I've had people make statements that under any other circumstances I would think that there would be repercussions for, and stated that they felt that the president deserved a bullet.
Mm.
Um, I've I've been in rooms where I've had vice presidents speaking, and they're giving speeches, and at the end of the speech they make a plug about the diversity and inclusion track that they're doing with their team and making sure that they're aware of it, and have motioned to me, being one of 5 Black people in a room of 100, to say, "Hi, Shakaya. There's Shakaya. There's our representative. She's right over
Yeah.
there." To check a box. Very comfortable. There's a lot of little things too that some people just kind of brush off their shoulders, like the constant, "Oh, I went tanning and I'm almost as dark as you are," or "Susie's almost as dark as you are," or other things, is the assumption that all Black people come from the same background, right? Not understanding that there's diversity within our own culture. And so, I've been approached by a lot of professionals, white professionals, and I've had them like use slang with me or ask me about like very impoverished type living. And I have to tell them that I didn't grow up that way and I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know how to address what you're saying. But there's all of these kind of assumptions about the story of a Black person in corporate America, in technology. If you're there, there must be something to it. There must be, like, how did you get here? So there's always this like very inquisitive thing, and they want to kind of figure out like, how are you here? What's your story? And it can be very invasive. It was very invasive for me for quite some time. Um, Being a Black woman, you also get labeled as the angry Black woman if you speak up. So, having to change your temperament. Also not being heard sometimes. I've sat in rooms where I've pitched ideas, and when I stated something, it went unheard, but my white male counterpart could state the same thing and he's getting applause. I actually worked on a team where I was the number one rep. But because of the daily affirmations and ego and needing to feed the ego of my male white counterparts, they were getting recognized daily. But, and I was actually getting scrutinized. And in the end, when the numbers came out, I was actually about 10% uh, in attainment than everybody else, and still was not acknowledged. Um, I've had things where I've had I received awards from my division in my last position, and my own local leadership did not even acknowledge me. So it's been quite a few things that have just transpired. Being a person of color, there are daily interactions that happen as well. And there's also the piece of it that a lot of people don't talk about because it's not acknowledged, which is nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication and exchanges of energy, they are very real, they're very present, and they do affect your work environment, especially if a person of color, when you are working with primarily people who are Caucasian, or there's just a lack of diversity in general. And so for me, it was really trying, and I, I'm not I'm not in any rush to ever go back. I won't ever go back, but it's definitely something that I have had to seek support to talk through some of these experiences because they are extremely traumatizing.
Yeah.
And that's also something that people don't talk about is that, for to the outside world, we as African American professionals in tech, we are looked at as, there's this level of admiration for us because we're going out, we're doing something different. But also on the other side, there is a lot of trauma that comes along with that because you're taking this stuff in every day. You're
Yeah.
taking treatment in every day. You are working with people who, it becomes very clear that they do not like you, that they do not want your presence there, and that they will blind you. They will do whatever it takes to try to sabotage you. And so you become very cautious of the things you say. You become very cautious of the words you use, because even if you're not actually, making a comment towards a situation, and I've had this happen to me, I found my comments end up in a situation or a dispute that I wasn't even a part of, but it was a way to utilize my voice to really support their position, but not
Mhm.
fall to them. And that happens a lot as well. And so just as African American in corporate, it's you have to step really lightly.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me it's um because I own my own businesses, usually for me it's more so on the sales end or dealing with other individuals. I had a investor I spoke to, and this was just kind of like a introductory meeting, and this was last year, so this is before Black Tech Talent, but I was talking to him to get some information, get some advice, and just get that introduction so we can start maybe building towards an investment conversation. But at the end of our meeting, it's just like, you're Black, so you got to know your numbers front and back, and you got to this, blah blah blah. It's going to be harder. And he wasn't saying it from a perspective of that's how he felt necessarily, but he's just letting me know, like, it's not going to be, you don't get to have that story that they have in Silicon Valley where you just have an idea and you remind somebody of themselves or their son, and they cut you a check and allow you to fail and allow you to discover or mentor you and say, hey, you're 80% there, let me help you get to that other 20%, right? They're like, you
Right.
got to be, you got to be there, you got to be so there that we have to look at ourselves, and that's why we're not investing, like. And so I get those conversations. The day that I did when recorded my acceptance speech for winning the Inclusive Evolution Award, I had one of those little microaggression situations where I'm walking through the Skyway and there's a white guy in front of me, and he's like, but we're like super close, right? And in my head, I'm just like, I wonder if he's going to be like the type to like open the door and try to pull it closed behind him, or like, what's he gonna do, or is he gonna be cool and like hold the door open for me, because the door you had to have a key,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, but I was pretty close behind him, so he wasn't confrontational enough to just pull the door shut, so he didn't hold it open either. He just kind of let it whatever, and I went through. But what he did was, once you get through the door with the key card, because it was a weekend, you still have to tap into security to open the next door. And so he's in front of me. He walks in front of the camera, and then he goes behind me to see if I can get in without him. And of course, I'm already anticipating this, so I hit the intercom. I show them my key. They buzz me in, and then I close the door behind me. Right? Let's see if you can get in without me, because I'm a member. And they know
Right.
me. So,
Right.
but mind you, I'm going to do my acceptance speech for an award for inclusion, right? So it's like there you do experience these things, daily or weekly or whatever it may be, and then you still push forward and become a champion. And I don't think people understand what that's like to be an adult and to be successful but still be disrespected by people as you're navigating and as you're heading towards your destination, whether it's being pulled over by the police, whether it's walking through a building, somebody, my photography studio I had, There was times where I'd go there and somebody was coming and I'd have to let them in. So I might be standing in the hallway waiting for them to come in or unloading stuff. And white people would literally ask me like, who are you here for? This is my studio. One time I had to get aggressive with a guy because the lockbox was the code box was outside. So you know how some apartment buildings you go through the first door and then you hit the intercom
Yep.
or whatever, but this one was outside. So sometimes when we'd have bad weather like rain or cold, it wouldn't work. It would freeze and whatever. So one time I was there and I had a client coming that I was getting ready to shoot and the box wasn't working or whatever. And this white guy comes out and then I go in and he literally tries to like pull the door shut and he's like, are you supposed to be here? And I'm being cool, right? Because a lot of buildings, they do tell you like don't let in people you don't know, don't hold the door open, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. So I'm being patient and I'm like, yep, this is my studio 201, blah, 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 this and that. And but he's just like pretty much like, I'm not gonna let you in. How do I know you're not gonna steal? And at that point, I just ripped the door open and pushed him out the way. And I was like, dude, move around. You don't own this place.
Yeah.
All the
I think.
facilities on the inside are locked. Like, move around. Because I even before I got irritated, I was like,
That's
you can come
crazy.
up with me and see me unlock my studio because I am going in after you. I said, but other than that, I don't have time to sit in here and debate with you. You don't work for the building. You're not the police. You're not security. You need to move around. And so we go through these things, like you mentioned, and it is traumatizing and it is mentally draining to, like I said, be receiving an award and still having people act funny towards you or have people act funny towards your guests. And I had to tell the owners of this one place one time where I'm having meetings and every time security would make me come down and get whoever I was meeting with if they were black.
Wow.
Every time, you know.
You know what, Mike? It's so sad and it's crazy. I want to say this because it just as you were talking, it just hit me. What people don't understand is that society as a whole has condemned anything that is Black culture.
Yeah.
Essentially, anything that is not standard white culture in terms of your dress, your etiquette, society's condemned it, America's condemned it, and so it's really sad that you know. And also, I think we should add, you and I, we live in Minnesota, and while people are very familiar with the Minnesota nice term, throughout the United States, what they don't understand is that is code for extremely passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's you're right. And honestly, I've been dealing with some of these biases, and some of these things have been showing up for me as an entrepreneur in financing in different facets of that way. And I've had to figure out how to maneuver around these people and be able to flush out their intentions and what they're trying to do and put it on Front Street so that I can still figure out how to get what I need, right? Because they have the ability to put roadblocks there. And to your point, what we are not shown is consideration. You're right. If we pitch something, we need to know everything. It has to be right then and every there. We're not given the same consideration and compassion that we see our white counterparts get.
Hmm.
Are scrutinized at a much higher level, a much higher rate. And the thing that I tell people is, as a Black woman in corporate America, I have to make sure that I cross my T's and dot my I's, because make one small step, the wrong step, it can be over. And my
Yeah.
career could have been over many a times. And so I think actually in that way, it's made me a little bit over analytical and you know and a bit uptight, but also gift and a curse, right? The gift is also within my own business, with knowing that, right? I'm very cautious to ensure that everything I'm building is structured properly, has a sound foundation, it's done the right way, because I understand the level of scrutiny that can come to me in my business, and I also understand what's at risk and how much I have to lose. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel good to have to walk on eggshells like that all the time, but that's the story of a African American professional in America today.
Definitely, definitely, and that's what we're working on, changing step by step. And like I said, for me, my activism is economic inclusion. Some people they take different routes, and it's good because we actually need every different route and every different way of activism, whether that's marching and protesting, whether that's even um, getting into some of these systems and
Mm-hmm.
infiltrating, and so that you can have a voice and knowledge on the inside. And for me, I look at it like, my perspective is, if you're a homeowner and you're paying property taxes, and those are going towards the schools in your neighborhoods that your children are going to, and if you have money to put behind campaigns for candidates that you want to see, and if you have when you have a certain level of financial freedom, you have the ability to sit back and take inventory of everything, of your health, of your lifestyle, of your dreams and goals and stuff. So going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's why I said hopefully around 40 or so, I'll be in a place where I can review things and go and get back to that 10-year-old who just wanted to do cool stuff, right? Because now I'm so much on the inside of so many things that it's just hard to even have that mind frame. It's hard to go to a concert as just an attendee when I produce concerts and I've helped route tours, right? It's just hard to
Exactly.
go and enjoy things without calculating how to make it better, how to make more money, how to or just how to be involved because you feel slighted for not being involved because you should
Mm-hmm.
have been involved, right? So I would like to get to that place where it's just I'm doing and working with who I would like to, because that's just simply what I enjoy, and I'm to a degree there as far as my entrepreneurship and the things that I create. Obviously, I love and enjoy and am passionate about. But the piece that we just talked about is raising the venture capital, partnering with these different corporations and getting them to understand the value of investing and putting in money and believing in what we're doing early so that we can continue to grow, and remembering that we're a startup, remembering that we're a for-profit business, so we're doing business, not charity, and being able to get to that level. So that's why I focus specifically on the economic inclusion piece, because to me, from my perspective, that's the piece that's going to um, change a lot of the issues that we have. Even if you look at a lot of the problems with our children, whether it's from grades to behavior to teen pregnancy and all that, a lot of that comes from the parents working two or three jobs, or working one job but working overtime, or whatever it may be. When you're that stressed and strapped for time and money, something's going to fall through the cracks. And there have been a lot of children who have got to a place where they admitted, like, yeah, I was acting out because you were gone all the time,
Yeah.
right? and
Yep.
and and another thing that tech can do for us outside of the financial side is having that data. Like we have post-traumatic stress disorders too, but they don't
We
count
do.
because we're not
We
the
do.
ones doing the research. We're not the ones holding the
Exactly.
data, you know like
As as a whole, we are suffering from PTSD.
but like people have seen people get shot and killed and murdered and all sorts of stuff, but it's like, nah. In Flint with the water, but it's like, nah. Like I just said, kids being telling admitting, like, yeah, I acted out because my parents were gone all the time. I didn't feel loved, or I didn't feel like they paid attention, right? But we don't get that those things don't count when it comes to us, and part of it's because we're not the ones doing the research. We're not, and then when we are, it's funded by, a corporation that's doing with the research what they want, and then we don't have the resources to go in and fix it. So even when we have all this great information about who we are, where we've come from, what we can do, what we've done, we still don't have the resources to do anything about it. We can be like, yeah, we're kings and queens and we're this and we're that and blah blah blah, and then you still can't do anything about it.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And, to your point about creating economic sustainability, that because we are always stressed, because we're suffering from PTSD, that's where the other pieces are getting lost.
Yeah.
And you can think about it, there's also this other piece. So
Oh, you froze for a second.
and because did not want to play sports, because my son did not have behavior problems, he did not qualify for a mentor
Yeah.
because they feel that he should be able to be fine just is. And so that for me was also very troubling because it's like, again, so because a child doesn't have behavior problems, they don't deserve resources. Because this young man doesn't have, he's not suffering in school educationally, he doesn't deserve additional resources to help him become a full rounded person and grow up and be able to go to college, get a job, and be able to be functional in the society that he has to acknowledge there is still racism. He is a Black man and that he is going to endure things that other people don't have to do. He's going to possibly have an encounter with the police that should not be necessary, which he's already had, and have to be able to talk through those types of things. And for me, that's also, it's very frustrating because again, it all boils down to me with what you're saying is that there is a lack of acknowledgement in the diversity and needs within our community, and that because our needs as a community have gone unmet for so long, we can't even start to really break down and really get granular on all the different areas of support and things that we need to fix because we're still fighting for the basic right of acknowledgement. We're still fighting for equality in the workforce, in in like, we're still fighting those basic things until we can get to even power and we're feeling the impact.
Yeah.
And you're right. We need to change that. We need to shift that and really start investing so people understand the work that you're doing. This again, it's an essential. It's an essential need to the continuation of us as a people, and we need more allies who are doing this kind of work, that are interested in this work, that want to put money and funding into this.
Yeah. For sure. Definitely. Well, that's pretty much our time. I want to give you a chance to shout out anything you're working on once again, any of your social media.
um I'm going to shout out to you, obviously, Black Tech Talent. Also, want to shout out to Hack the Gap, Caroline Karanja, another sister doing a phenomenal work. Still need to figure out a way to bring this synergy together because I think that there's something here and there can be amazing work done.
Definitely.
I guess shout out to my own organizations, Healing Homes, Living Services, and Betty's Healing Homes. We are servicing the community. We are providing housing to persons who need it. We're providing short-term housing to women who are in inpatient treatment, who are trying to recover and get well so that they can return home to their families and children that is disabled, and giving them. That's all I got.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. And I want to just shout out all the companies that have worked with us thus far. all the awesome, diversity inclusion officers, the IT recruitment managers, all the HR people who've reached out and been genuinely genuine about working with us. I also want to give a shout out to our podcast sponsor, Granicus, empowering a modern digital government. And with that said, we're out.